There is a point at which heat stops being just a matter of temperature and becomes a force that seeps into the human mind. As the planet warms, episodes of sudden, intense atmospheric heating, sometimes called heat bursts, are beginning to push communities beyond physical endurance and into deep psychological strain. These events, marked by rapid temperature spikes and suffocating humidity, do more than drain energy and water. They dismantle mental balance, erode social cohesion, and trigger emotional crises that linger long after the air cools. The growing body of evidence linking climate stress to mental health collapse paints a troubling picture of the future. The heat itself may not always kill directly, but it is reshaping the human psyche, carving anxiety, aggression, and despair into the fabric of daily life. In communities repeatedly exposed to extreme heat, the effects are cumulative and insidious. Each wave of oppressive warmth amplifies the exhaustion left by the last one. People sleep less, their tempers shorten, and their concentration fades. Studies show that violent crime, domestic abuse, and even suicide rates rise during prolonged heat spells. The brain's ability to regulate emotion deteriorates when the body struggles to stay cool, leading to impulsive behavior and loss of self-control. For those already vulnerable, people living in poverty, suffering from chronic mental illness, or lacking access to cooling, the stress can become overwhelming. A heat burst does not just overheat the body, it burns through mental reserves, leaving individuals and entire communities more fragile with each episode. The psychological effects are not evenly distributed. Urban residents trapped in heat islands, where concrete and asphalt radiate stored warmth through the night, are among the most affected. When temperatures fail to drop after sunset, the human nervous system cannot recover. Sleep deprivation becomes chronic, and with it comes irritability, confusion, and heightened risk of anxiety disorders. In such conditions, hospitals see rising numbers of patients not only with physical heat exhaustion but also panic attacks, depressive episodes, and acute stress reactions. Mental health services, already underfunded in many countries, are not equipped for this kind of climate-driven surge. What was once a seasonal challenge is evolving into a year-round crisis that merges environmental instability with psychological collapse. For rural communities and farmers, the mental toll takes a different shape, but is no less devastating. Repeated heat waves destroy crops, dry up rivers, and kill livestock, erasing livelihoods built over generations. This loss of control over one's environment, the slow realization that survival depends on forces no longer predictable, creates a profound sense of helplessness. Climate-related depression, sometimes called eco-anxiety, is becoming a defining disorder of the modern age. In agricultural regions, suicide rates often spike following failed harvests linked to heat stress. The despair is not irrational, it is a response to a collapsing sense of stability. When the land no longer behaves as it once did, it feels like a betrayal of the very rhythm that anchored life itself. The young and the elderly are particularly defenseless in the face of these psychological pressures. Children growing up under constant climate stress show higher levels of anxiety and attention difficulties, shaped by an unspoken fear of a hostile future. They are inheriting a world where outdoor play becomes dangerous for days at a time, and where each summer brings headlines of death and disaster. The elderly, meanwhile, face isolation and fear during heat events, unable to leave their homes, often living alone without cooling systems. The combination of loneliness and environmental stress deepens feelings of abandonment and despair. Deaths from heat stroke among older adults frequently occur quietly, but the psychological trauma experienced by survivors and families reverberates through entire communities. As these mental health effects accumulate, societies begin to show cracks that go far beyond individual suffering. Heat waves can undermine trust and cooperation, especially in densely populated areas where resources such as water and electricity become scarce. Power outages during peak heat periods ignite frustration and social unrest. When people's patience thins and their perception of danger rises, communities that once stood together can fracture under the strain. The sense of collective identity, already weakened by inequality and fear, can dissolve into competition for survival. Climate stress thus becomes both a personal and social toxin, eroding empathy and stability. The relationship between heat and mental illness is further complicated by air pollution, which tends to worsen under stagnant, hot conditions. Smog traps particulate matter that inflames the respiratory system and indirectly affects the brain through chronic oxygen stress. People exposed to such environments report higher rates of mood swings, fatigue, and hopelessness. These environmental assaults on both body and mind feed each other in a vicious loop. The sicker people become physically, the more their mental health deteriorates, and the less capable they are of coping with the next crisis. Climate change is therefore not only about rising seas or melting glaciers, it is about the erosion of human psychological resilience. The most alarming aspect of this trend is its invisibility. Heat-related deaths are easy to count. Mental health breakdowns are not. Anxiety disorders, burnout, substance abuse, and domestic violence tied to heat waves often go unrecorded, creating the illusion that their impact is minor. But in reality, the silent spread of climate-induced mental distress may become one of the largest public health challenges of the century. The psychological effects will not fade when the temperature drops. They will persist, compounding with each new disaster. In areas repeatedly struck by climate extremes, a culture of trauma is forming, one that normalizes fear and loss as part of everyday life. There is no easy treatment for this kind of planetary stress disorder. Therapy, medication, and community support can ease symptoms, but they cannot restore a sense of safety in a world where the environment itself has turned volatile. For many, the recognition that the heat will keep coming is the hardest part to bear. This is the emotional shadow of climate change, the knowledge that each year may be worse than the last. Without large-scale action to mitigate global warming and adapt urban design to withstand extreme heat, the psychological cost will keep growing. What makes the threat so haunting is its universality. No society, no class, no nation can shield itself from the emotional consequences of a destabilized climate. The same heat burst that scorches crops in India can trigger fires in California or sleepless nights in Paris. The same rising temperatures that drive anxiety in one city can drive despair in another. Climate stress has no borders, and as the planet warms further, the mental strain will spread faster than any physical disease. In the end, the greatest danger may not be the heat itself, but what it does to the human spirit. Each wave of extreme temperature chips away at our sense of control, our empathy, and our faith in a livable future. As the climate crisis deepens, so does the quiet epidemic of mental exhaustion that accompanies it. Unless humanity confronts the emotional reality of this warming world alongside its physical and economic challenges, the next century may not just be hotter, it may be lonelier, angrier, and far more unstable than any generation before has ever known.